Standing in my childhood kitchen, I watched my parents host their annual neighborhood barbecue. Dad raised his beer, grinning at the crowd gathered around our patio table. "You know what they say," he announced loudly. "Some kids make you proud, others just take up space." Everyone erupted in laughter as he gestured toward me washing dishes through the window. Mom nodded approvingly, adding, "At least the successful ones visit more than twice a year." The neighbors chuckled knowingly. What they didn't know was that I had just discovered something that would change everything. Before we dive into this incredible journey of family karma, tell me where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you're ready for some serious family drama, and don't forget to subscribe because this story gets absolutely wild. Trust me, you won't see this twist coming. My name is Scarlett Morrison, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed I was the family disappointment. While my golden child brother Marcus flaunted his law degree and six-figure salary, I struggled as a freelance graphic designer, barely making ends meet in my tiny Chicago apartment. Every family gathering felt like a performance where I played the supporting role to his starring act. The barbecue comment stung, but it wasn't new. What was new was the manila envelope I discovered that morning while helping Mom clean out the attic. I'd been looking for old Christmas decorations when I knocked over a dusty box behind the water heater. Legal documents scattered across the floor, and one caught my eye immediately. Last will and testament of Eleanor Whitfield Morrison, my grandmother. The grandmother who supposedly died penniless when I was 12, leaving nothing but debt and heartache. I remembered the funeral, remembered Mom crying about medical bills and lost savings, but this document told a different story entirely. Eleanor had left everything to me. Her house on Maple Street, worth at least $400,000 in today's market. Her antique collection appraised at over $200,000. Her savings accounts, investment portfolios, even a small cabin in Vermont I never knew existed. The total estate value exceeded $1.2 million. But here was the kicker. The will was dated just 6 months before her death, and it specifically stated that if anything happened to me before I turned 30, everything would go to Marcus instead. I was 29 now, just 4 months away from my 30th birthday. The inheritance was supposed to be mine 8 years ago. I photographed every document with shaking hands, my mind racing. Why hadn't anyone told me? Where was this money now? As I dug deeper through the box, I found bank statements, property deeds, and insurance policies, all bearing my name as beneficiary. There were also letters, handwritten letters from Grandma Eleanor to me dated just weeks before her death. "My dearest Scarlett," one read, "I know your parents think you're not practical enough for this world, but I see something in you they don't. You have the heart your brother lacks, the creativity this family needs. This inheritance isn't just money, it's your chance to prove them wrong." Another letter was even more revealing. "I've made arrangements with my lawyer, Mr. Peterson, to ensure everything transfers to you smoothly. Your parents have been pressuring me to leave everything to Marcus, claiming you're too irresponsible, but I've seen how you care for people. That matters more than any degree." My hands trembled as I read the final letter. "If something seems wrong after I'm gone, if they try to convince you, I left. Nothing, remember that I loved you most of all. The truth has a way of surfacing, sweetheart. Trust your instincts." And I sat in that dusty attic for 2 hours, pieces clicking into place like a horrific puzzle. The mysterious renovations my parents had done to their house right after the funeral, Marcus's sudden ability to pay off his student loans, Mom's new car, Dad's boat, their upgraded kitchen, all appearing within months of Grandma's death. They had stolen my inheritance. My own parents and brother had conspired to rob me of over $1 million in 8 years of financial security. While I struggled to pay rent, ate ramen noodles for dinner, and skipped social events because I couldn't afford them, they lived comfortably off money that legally belonged to me. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the gaslighting. Every snide comment about my financial struggles, every lecture about being more responsible, every comparison to Marcus and his success built on my stolen inheritance. They had watched me struggle and blamed me for it, knowing they were the cause. I needed proof. I needed to understand exactly how they'd pulled this off and what I could do about it. My first stop was going to be Mr. Peterson's law office, assuming he was still practicing. Then I'd need to trace where the money had gone, how they'd managed to override a legal will, and whether I had any recourse after all these years. But first I had to get through the rest of this barbecue without revealing what I knew. I slipped the most important documents into my purse and carefully reposited the box. When I came downstairs, the party was in full swing. Dad was regaling everyone with stories about Marcus's latest promotion while Mom served her famous potato salad. "There she is," Dad called out as I rejoined the group. "Scarlett, tell everyone about that logo project you're working on." "What's it pay again, $200? The neighbors chuckled politely. Mrs. Henderson from next door shook her head sympathetically. "It's so hard for creative types to make a living these days." "Some people are just built different," Marcus chimed in, loosening his tie. "Some of us are driven to succeed, others are content with simpler aspirations." I smiled and nodded, playing my role perfectly. "You're absolutely right, Marcus. Some people definitely have advantages, others don't." The irony was lost on them, but not on me. As I helped clean up later that evening, I studied my family with new eyes. Mom hummed cheerfully while loading her expensive dishwasher. Dad relaxed in his leather recliner, the one that had appeared mysteriously after the funeral. Marcus scrolled through his phone, probably checking his investment portfolio built on my stolen money. They had no idea what was coming. They thought they'd successfully buried their crime along with Grandma Eleanor, but the truth, as she'd predicted, was about to surface. And when it did, their comfortable lives built on lies and theft would come crashing down around them. I kissed them all goodbye that night, promising to call soon. "Thanks for the lovely evening," I said sweetly. "It really opened my eyes to so many things." As I drove home, I made a mental list. Monday, I'd call Mr. Peterson. Tuesday, I'd visit the courthouse to research property transfers. By the end of the week, I'd know exactly how they'd stolen from me. And then the real fun would begin. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept, alternating between fury and disbelief as I processed what I'd discovered. Mr. Peterson's law office was located in a converted Victorian house downtown, the kind of place that screamed old money and established reputation. The receptionist, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, greeted me warmly. "I'm looking for information about my grandmother's will," I explained. "Eleanor Whitfield Morrison. She passed away 8 years ago." Her expression shifted immediately. "Oh my goodness, you must be Scarlett. Mr. Peterson has been wondering about you for years. Please have a seat. I'll get him right away." Within minutes, a distinguished man in his 70s emerged from the back office, his face lighting up with recognition. "Scarlett Morrison. I was beginning to think I'd never see you again." "What do you mean?" I asked, though my stomach already knew the answer. "Mr. Peterson gestured me into his office, which was lined floor to ceiling with legal books and family photos. "Your grandmother's will was very specific about contacting you directly when she passed. But when I called the number she'd given me, your mother answered and told me you were unreachable." "Unreachable how?" "She said you were dealing with severe mental health issues and had been committed to a psychiatric facility. She provided documentation showing that your father had been granted temporary guardianship over your affairs due to your condition." He shook his head sadly. "I had my doubts, but the paperwork seemed legitimate." The room spun slightly. "I've never been in any psychiatric facility. I've never had any mental health issues requiring hospitalization." Mr. Peterson's expression darkened. "I was afraid of that." The documentation your mother provided was very convincing. Medical records, court orders, even a letter supposedly from you relinquishing your claim to the inheritance due to your inability to manage financial affairs. They forged everything. It appears so. I kept copies of everything because something felt wrong, but I couldn't prove it at the time. He opened a thick file folder. Your grandmother was very insistent that this inheritance go to you specifically. She came in multiple times to revise the will, each time making it more difficult for anyone to contest or redirect the bequest. As Mr. Peterson spread the documents across his desk, the full scope of my family's betrayal became clear. They hadn't just stolen money. They'd constructed an elaborate fraud involving forged medical records, falsified court documents, and fabricated psychiatric evaluations. They'd essentially erased my legal existence for long enough to steal everything Grandma had left me. What's the statute of limitations on this kind of fraud? I asked. In cases involving forged documents and conspiracy to commit theft of this magnitude, we're looking at felony charges with no statute of limitations, especially since they've continued to benefit from the proceeds. He leaned forward. Scarlett, I need you to know that I never felt right about this. I've kept detailed records of every interaction with your family because I hoped someday the truth would come out. The paper trail was extensive. Phone records showing multiple calls between Mom and Mr. Peterson's office, copies of the forged documents, financial records showing how the inheritance had been distributed after being transferred to Marcus as the supposed backup beneficiary. Even correspondence between my parents and various financial institutions. They were thorough, Mr. Peterson admitted. But they made one crucial mistake. They got greedy and started spending the money immediately. Real estate purchases, luxury items, investment accounts. It's all traceable. I spent 3 hours in that office documenting everything. The forged psychiatric evaluation claiming I was delusional and paranoid. The fake court order granting Dad guardianship. The fraudulent letter supposedly from me written in handwriting that didn't even remotely resemble mine relinquishing all claims to the inheritance. What's my next step? I asked as we wrapped up. We need to file criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and theft. We also need to file a civil suit to recover the assets. Given the amount of money involved and the sophistication of the fraud, this is going to attract serious attention from law enforcement. He handed me a business card. This is Detective Sarah Martinez. She specializes in white-collar crime and family fraud cases. I've worked with her before. She's going to want to see everything. As I drove to the police station, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Hey sis, hope you're doing okay after Dad's comment yesterday. You know he doesn't mean anything by it. Family dinner Sunday. The audacity was breathtaking. He was literally inviting me to dinner while sitting on money he'd helped steal from me. I typed back, wouldn't miss it for the world. Detective Martinez was everything Mr. Peterson had promised. Sharp, thorough, and clearly experienced with family financial crimes. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes or asking for clarification. This is actually more common than you'd think, she said when I finished. Family members exploiting inheritance laws, especially when mental health claims are involved. But the scale of this fraud and the sophistication of the forged documents puts this in serious felony territory. She explained the process. They'd need to verify the authenticity of the documents, trace the financial transfers, and build a timeline of the fraud. Given the amount of evidence Mr. Peterson had preserved, she was confident they had enough for criminal charges. I need to warn you, though, Detective Martinez said. This is going to destroy your family relationships permanently. Once we start this investigation, there's no going back. Are you prepared for that? I thought about 8 years of struggle, 8 years of being made to feel like a failure while they lived off my money. 8 years of condescending comments and pitying looks from relatives who thought I couldn't get my life together. Detective, they destroyed our family relationship when they chose to steal from me and lie about it for 8 years. I'm just making sure everyone else knows the truth." She smiled grimly. "Fair enough. We'll start by freezing any remaining assets and issuing preservation notices to prevent them from moving money around once they realize what's happening. How long until your next family gathering? Sunday dinner, 5 days. Perfect. That gives us time to get our ducks in a row. I have a feeling this Sunday is going to be very interesting for the Morrison family." As I left the police station, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope, not just for financial justice, but for vindication. Soon everyone would know who had really been taking up space in this family. The next 4 days passed in a blur of legal preparation and careful acting. Detective Martinez worked with ruthless efficiency, assembling a case that would make my family's fraud impossible to deny. Meanwhile, I had to maintain the charade of being the struggling, oblivious daughter they'd manipulated for 8 years. Tuesday brought a breakthrough that exceeded even my expectations. Detective Martinez called with news that made my hands shake with anticipation. "Scarlett, we've traced the inheritance money, and it gets worse. They didn't just steal from you once. They've been using your grandmother's identity to claim benefits and tax refunds for years after her death. We're looking at additional charges of identity theft and Social Security fraud." "How much total are we talking about?" "Conservative estimate over $2 million when you factor in the original inheritance, investment growth, fraudulent claims, and tax benefits they've received. Plus, we found something interesting about Marcus's law firm." My heart pounded. "What about it?" "He used part of your inheritance as startup capital for his practice. The business loan applications clearly show the source of funds as family inheritance, but list him as the beneficiary. His entire career success is literally built on your stolen money." The irony was so perfect, it almost made me laugh. Marcus, the golden child who never let anyone forget about his achievements, had built his entire reputation on money that belonged to me. Every condescending comment about my career, every lecture about success and responsibility, every comparison between his accomplishments and my struggles, all of it was funded by theft. Wednesday brought more revelations. Mr. Peterson discovered additional documentation hidden in Grandma's safety deposit box, which had finally been processed by the bank. Among the items was a video recording she'd made just weeks before her death. "My darling Scarlett," her voice crackled through the old cassette player, "if you're watching this, it means something has gone wrong with my will. I want you to know that I've left everything to you because you're the only one in this family who understands what love actually means. Your parents have been pressuring me for months to change my will, claiming you're irresponsible and unstable. But I've watched you care for people your whole life, and that's worth more than any degree or job title." She paused, and I could hear her labored breathing. "I've hidden copies of all my important documents in places they'll never think to look. If they try to steal from you, remember that love isn't about blood. It's about choice. Choose the people who choose you, sweetheart." The recording continued with specific instructions about hidden documents and accounts my parents had never discovered. Grandma had been suspicious of their motives and had taken precautions they'd never imagined. She'd been protecting me even from beyond the grave. Thursday's revelation was perhaps the most infuriating yet. Detective Martinez's financial investigation revealed that my parents had used my stolen inheritance to establish a college fund for Marcus's future children. Children who didn't even exist yet. They'd literally stolen my financial security to ensure the next generation of golden children would never struggle the way they'd forced me to. "There's more," Detective Martinez said during our Thursday evening call. "We found evidence that they've been monitoring your finances for years. They have access to your credit report, your bank statements, even your tax returns. They've been keeping tabs on your financial struggles while knowing they were the cause." The surveillance explained so much. how they always seemed to know when I was behind on rent, why they'd offered just enough help to keep me afloat, but never enough to actually improve my situation. They'd been managing my poverty like a careful investment, keeping me dependent and grateful while they lived luxuriously on my money. Friday arrived with the final piece of preparation. Detective Martinez had coordinated with the district attorney's office to have arrest warrants ready for Sunday evening. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let them enjoy one final family dinner, then serve them with criminal charges for fraud, theft, forgery, and identity theft. We'll have undercover officers positioned around the house, she explained. Once you give us the signal, we'll move in. I want them to understand the full scope of what they've done before they're arrested. I spent Friday evening preparing my own surprise for Sunday's dinner. If they wanted to humiliate me in front of people, I'd give them a taste of their own medicine. I reached out to every family member, every neighbor, every family friend who'd witnessed years of their condescending treatment. I invited them all to Sunday dinner. I have some exciting news to share with the whole family, I told each person individually. Something that's going to change everything about how we see each other. Aunt Patricia, who'd always felt sorry for me, was thrilled to come. "Oh, honey, did you finally get that big design contract you've been hoping for?" "Something like that," I said. "Something that's going to surprise everyone." Uncle Robert and Aunt Susan agreed to drive in from the suburbs. The Henderson family from next door accepted eagerly, always ready for drama. Even some of Marcus's colleagues from the law firm promised to attend after I mentioned that Marcus had specifically asked me to invite them to celebrate his success. By Saturday evening, 23 people had confirmed attendance for Sunday's dinner. Mom called me 3 times confused about why so many people were coming and why I was suddenly enthusiastic about family gatherings. "Sweetheart, this is wonderful, but it's so unlike you to organize something this elaborate. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm feeling better than I have in years, Mom. I just realized it's time to show everyone who I really am." Saturday night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I would say, how I would reveal the truth, what their faces would look like when they realized their carefully constructed lies were crumbling around them. Detective Martinez had given me a small recording device to capture their reactions when confronted with evidence. "The moment they admit to anything, even accidentally, we have them," she'd explained. "Family fraud cases often hinge on admissions of guilt. People get defensive and say things they shouldn't." Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was preparing for justice. I dressed carefully in the outfit I'd worn to Grandma Eleanor's funeral 8 years ago. She would have appreciated the symbolism. As I drove to my childhood home for what would likely be the last time I thought about all the family dinners where I'd sat quietly while they mocked my struggles. All the times I'd bitten my tongue when they compared me unfavorably to Marcus. All the years I'd believed their narrative that I was the disappointment, the one who couldn't quite measure up. Today, that narrative would die permanently. The house was already bustling with activity when I arrived. Mom had outdone herself with decorations and food, clearly trying to impress the unexpectedly large crowd. Dad was in full host mode, regaling early arrivals with stories about Marcus's latest achievements. Marcus himself was holding court in the living room wearing an expensive suit that I now knew was purchased with my money. "Scarlett!" Mom rushed over to hug me. "I still don't understand what this celebration is about, but everyone seems so excited." "Oh, you'll understand soon enough, Mom. We're celebrating the truth finally coming to light." She looked puzzled but distracted, hurrying back to the kitchen to check on the roast. I positioned myself near the dining room where I could see both the front door and the kitchen. Detective Martinez had texted that unmarked units were in position around the block. Everything was ready. 23 witnesses, mountains of evidence, criminal charges prepared, and recording equipment active. My parents and brother had no idea they were about to experience the complete destruction of their comfortable lives built on lies and theft. The doorbell rang, and more guests arrived. Soon the house would be full of people eager to hear my big announcement. They were expecting maybe an engagement or a career breakthrough. Instead, they were about to witness the most spectacular family implosion in neighborhood history. I checked my phone. Detective Martinez was ready. The district attorney was standing by. 8 years of injustice was about to be corrected in the most public, humiliating way possible. Time to give my family exactly what they deserved. By 6 o'clock, the house was packed. 23 people crowded into our modest dining room and living room, creating exactly the audience I needed for what was about to unfold. The irony wasn't lost on me that this was probably the most successful event I'd ever organized, and it was designed to destroy my family's reputation forever. Mom bustled around nervously, clearly overwhelmed by the crowd, but trying to maintain her composure. "Scarlett, when exactly are you planning to make this announcement? People are getting hungry." "Right after dinner, Mom. I want everyone to have full stomachs for what's coming. Trust me, it's going to be a lot to digest." Dad was already 3 beers deep, growing more boastful by the minute. He'd cornered Uncle Robert and was explaining loudly enough for everyone to hear how proud he was of Marcus's success. "That boy has always had drive, you know. Some kids just have it, others don't. Scarlett's creative, and all but creativity doesn't pay the bills." Marcus basked in the attention, regaling his law firm colleagues with stories about his recent partnership offer. "Hard work and smart investments," he told them. I was fortunate enough to have some family resources to help launch my practice. Sometimes having the right foundation makes all the difference. I excused myself and stepped onto the back porch to text Detective Martinez. 30 minutes. They're getting comfortable. Units in position. Recording equipment is active on your signal." When I returned to the dining room, Mom was calling everyone to take their seats. The table was beautiful, set with Grandma Eleanor's china that I now knew should have been mine. Even the silverware and crystal glasses were part of my stolen inheritance, now being used to host my family's final meal as free people. "Before we eat," I announced, standing at the head of the table, "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This really is a special occasion, and I'm so grateful to have all the people who've watched our family over the years here to witness what I'm about to share." Dad raised his beer. "To Scarlett, finally ready to share some good news with the family." Everyone applauded politely. I smiled and activated the recording device in my pocket. Dinner conversation flowed as usual. Dad and Marcus dominated the discussion while Mom played the perfect hostess. Various relatives and neighbors chimed in with compliments about the food, questions about Marcus's career, and polite inquiries about my latest projects. Mrs. Henderson turned to me during the main course. "Scarlett, dear, I have to ask, your parents were telling us about your grandmother's estate situation. Such a shame she left so many debts behind. It must have been difficult for your family to handle all those obligations." The opening I'd been waiting for. "Actually, Mrs. Henderson, that's part of what I wanted to discuss tonight. Grandma Eleanor's estate is a fascinating topic." Dad's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Honey, we don't need to bore everyone with ancient history." "Oh, but it's not ancient history at all, Dad. In fact, it's remarkably current." I stood up again, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "Everyone, I have something to share that's going to surprise you. 3 weeks ago, I discovered some documents in our attic, documents that revealed something extraordinary about Grandma Eleanor's will." The room fell silent. Mom's face had gone pale. Marcus was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Actual fear. "It turns out," I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet room, "Grandma Eleanor didn't leave debts behind. She left an inheritance worth over $1.2 million, an inheritance she specifically designated for me in her will." Gasps echoed around the table. Aunt Patricia nearly choked on her wine. "Scarlett, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about fraud, Aunt Patricia. Sophisticated long-term fraud involving forged documents, false psychiatric evaluations, and stolen identity. I'm talking about my parents and brother conspiring to steal my inheritance and then spending 8 years watching me struggle financially while they lived off my money. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Scarlett, you're being ridiculous. You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, Dad, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know about the forged documents claiming I was mentally incompetent. I know about the fake guardianship papers. I know about the fraudulent letter supposedly from me relinquishing my inheritance. I even know about the identity theft you've been committing using Grandma's information for years after her death. Marcus finally found his voice. This is insane. You're having some kind of breakdown. The only breakdown happening here, Marcus, is the collapse of your lies. Tell everyone how you used my stolen inheritance as startup capital for your law firm. Explain to your colleagues how your entire career is built on money that was legally mine. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. People began looking back and forth between my family and me, pieces clicking into place. Mrs. Henderson spoke up. Wait, is this why you renovated your kitchen right after the funeral and bought that boat? Mom's composure finally cracked. Scarlett, stop this right now. You're embarrassing yourself. The only people who should be embarrassed are the 3 criminals sitting at this table who've been living off stolen money for 8 years. I pulled out my phone and showed the room photos of the forged documents. These are the fake psychiatric records they used to steal my inheritance. Notice how the handwriting on this supposed letter from me doesn't match my actual handwriting at all. Uncle Robert examined the documents, his expression growing darker. Jesus Christ, these are obviously forged. The signatures don't even look similar. Dad stood up abruptly. Everyone needs to leave, now. This is a private family matter. Actually, Dad, it's a criminal matter, which is why I invited all these witnesses. I wanted everyone who's watched you humiliate me for years to understand who the real disappointment in this family is. I walked to the window and opened it slightly. The signal Detective Martinez was waiting for. You see, everyone, while I was supposedly struggling because I was lazy and irresponsible, my family was actively sabotaging me. They stole my financial security and then mocked me for not being successful. They created my poverty and then blamed me for it. Marcus shot to his feet. Enough. This is completely fabricated. Tell that to the police. Marcus, tell that to Detective Martinez, who's been building a criminal case against all 3 of you for the past week. Tell that to the district attorney, who's prepared felony charges for fraud, forgery, theft, and identity theft. The front door opened, and Detective Martinez entered with 2 uniformed officers. The room fell into stunned silence as she displayed her badge. Thomas Morrison, Patricia Morrison, and Marcus Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, grand theft, and identity theft. The chaos that followed was everything I'd dreamed of, and more. Dad tried to run toward the back door, but was stopped by another officer. Mom collapsed into her chair, sobbing about how this would ruin them. Marcus attempted to lawyer his way out of the situation, demanding to call his attorney, not realizing his attorney was sitting 3 feet away watching his world crumble. As the handcuffs clicked into place, I addressed the shocked room one final time. 8 years ago, my family chose money over love. Today, they're learning that choice has consequences. The aftermath of the arrests unfolded like a perfectly orchestrated symphony of destruction. As my parents and Marcus were read their rights in front of 23 horrified witnesses, I felt a satisfaction so profound it almost scared me. 8 years of suppressed rage and humiliation were finally finding their release. Detective Martinez had prepared for every contingency. As soon as the handcuffs were secured, additional officers began executing search warrants for financial documents, computers, and any remaining evidence of the fraud. The house that had been filled with laughter and conversation 20 minutes earlier was now a crime scene. Mrs. Henderson approached me, her face pale with shock. "Scarlett, honey, how long have you known about this?" "I discovered the truth 1 week ago. I've spent the last 6 days building a case with the police and gathering evidence. I wanted everyone who'd witnessed their treatment of me over the years to see the truth revealed." Aunt Patricia was crying, not from my parents, but from guilt. "Oh my God, all those times we felt sorry for them having to support you. All those conversations about how worried they were about your future. They were criminals." Uncle Robert was examining the forged documents, his background in banking, making him particularly qualified to spot the fraud. "These are shockingly amateurish forgeries. How did they think they'd get away with this?" "They got away with it for 8 years, I replied. "They might have gotten away with it forever if I hadn't accidentally found Grandma's real will." The law firm colleagues who'd come to celebrate Marcus's success were in professional crisis mode. Senior partner David Walsh pulled me aside, his face grave. "Scarlett, I need you to understand that our firm had no knowledge of the source of Marcus's startup capital. We're going to need to conduct a full internal investigation, but I can tell you right now that his partnership with us is terminated immediately." "I figured as much. Will you be able to recover the money he invested?" "We'll be working with law enforcement to determine what assets can be seized and recovered. This is going to destroy our firm's reputation if it gets out that we unknowingly accepted stolen money as investment capital." As the evening progressed, neighbors began sharing stories that painted an even darker picture of my family's deception. The Hendersons revealed that my parents had borrowed money from them several times over the years, claiming I had medical emergencies or educational expenses, money that had never been used for its stated purpose. "They told us you'd been hospitalized for depression and needed experimental treatment," Mrs. Henderson said, tears streaming down her face. "We gave them $3,000 because we wanted to help you get better." Other neighbors came forward with similar stories. The Rodriguez family had donated money for my supposed college expenses. The Johnsons had contributed to what they believed was a fund for my mental health treatment. In total, my parents had defrauded our neighbors out of over $15,000 using fake emergencies about my well-being. Detective Martinez coordinated the evidence collection with military precision. Financial documents, computer hard drives, bank records, and investment portfolios were all seized as evidence. The house that had been my childhood home was being dismantled piece by piece as investigators documented every luxury item purchased with my stolen inheritance. "We found additional evidence of identity theft," she informed me as the searches continued. "They've been filing tax returns using your grandmother's Social Security number for 3 years after her death. The IRS is going to want to pursue federal charges on top of the state crimes." The scope of their criminal enterprise was breathtaking. What I'd initially thought was a single instance of inheritance theft had evolved into a years-long pattern of fraud, forgery, and identity theft that had victimized not just me, but our entire community. By 10 o'clock, the house was empty except for police personnel and myself. My parents and Marcus had been transported to the county jail for booking. Their bail hearing was scheduled for the following morning, and Detective Martinez expected the district attorney to request high bail amounts given the flight risk and the substantial assets involved. "What happens now?" I asked as she finished her preliminary report. "Now the real work begins. We'll need to trace every dollar of the stolen inheritance, identify all the assets purchased with those funds, and begin the recovery process. Your attorney can start civil proceedings to reclaim your property and investments while we pursue the criminal charges." Mr. Z. Peterson arrived as the police were finishing up, having been called to coordinate the legal recovery process. His satisfaction was evident as he surveyed the scene. Scarlett, I've been practicing law for 40 years, and I've never seen a fraud case this thoroughly documented or this satisfying to resolve. How long until I actually get my money back? Asset recovery in fraud cases can take months or even years, but the evidence is so overwhelming that I expect we'll be able to freeze their accounts immediately and begin liquidation proceedings within weeks. Your grandmother's house alone will provide substantial immediate recovery. As we spoke, I received the first of what would be hundreds of text messages and calls over the next few days. Word of the arrests was already spreading through social media, with dinner guests sharing the incredible story of family fraud and public exposure. My cousin Jennifer, Marcus's sister, who lived across the country, called in tears. Scarlett, I just heard from Aunt Patricia. Is it true? Did Marcus really steal your inheritance? It's all true, Jennifer. Your brother built his entire career on money that belonged to me, while your parents watched me struggle and mocked me for it. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. All these years I thought you were just... I'm so ashamed of what my family did to you. The calls continued through the night. Distant relatives, old friends, former classmates who'd heard the story through the social media grapevine. Everyone wanted to express shock-offer support or share their own memories of my family's suspicious behavior over the years. The most satisfying call came from my former landlord, who'd evicted me 2 years earlier for being late on rent. Scarlett, I just heard about your situation. I want you to know that if I'd understood what was really happening, I never would have evicted you. Is there anything I can do to help? By midnight, I was emotionally and physically exhausted, but strangely energized. The justice I'd dreamed of was finally happening. My family's comfortable lives built on stolen money and lies were crumbling exactly as they deserved. The community that had pitied me for years now understood who the real victims were. As I drove home to my tiny apartment for what I hoped would be one of the last times I thought about Grandma Eleanor's final letter, she'd been right about love being a choice, not an obligation. My biological family had chosen money over me 8 years ago. Tomorrow I'd begin choosing the people who actually deserved my love and loyalty. The Morrison family name was about to become synonymous with fraud and betrayal in our community. Meanwhile, I was finally free to become who I was always meant to be. 3 months after that explosive Sunday dinner, I stood in the doorway of my grandmother's house, my house now, watching the morning sun stream through the windows she'd loved so much. The legal proceedings had moved with remarkable speed once the evidence was presented. My parents and Marcus had pled guilty to avoid even longer prison sentences, and the asset recovery process was nearly complete. The transformation in my life had been nothing short of miraculous. Within weeks of the arrests, I'd recovered over $800,000 in liquid assets, plus the house Grandma's antique collection and the Vermont cabin I'd never known existed. The remaining assets were being liquidated to cover restitution legal fees and the money they'd defrauded from our neighbors. But the financial recovery, while satisfying, wasn't the most meaningful change in my life. The real transformation was in how people treated me, how I saw myself, and how I'd learned to distinguish between family and people who actually cared about me. The trial had been a media sensation in our small community. Local news stations covered the story of inheritance fraud and family betrayal. The headline, "Family Steals Daughter's Inheritance, Mocks Her Poverty for Years," had generated hundreds of supportive comments from people sharing their own stories of family financial abuse. My graphic design business had exploded overnight as people learned my story. Companies wanted to work with someone who'd overcome such adversity with grace and determination. Within 2 months, I was earning more than I ever had, with a waiting list of clients who specifically sought me out because of my reputation for integrity. Marcus had received the harshest sentence: 5 years in federal prison for the tax fraud and identity theft, plus another 3 years on state charges. His law license was permanently revoked, his partnership was dissolved, and his reputation was destroyed. The man who'd built his identity on being the successful son was now a convicted felon whose career accomplishments were forever tainted by fraud. Mom and Dad each received 4 years, with the possibility of parole in 2.5 years if they made full restitution to all victims. They'd lost their house, their savings, their social standing, and their relationship with most of the extended family. The neighborhood they'd lived in for 20 years now knew them as criminals who'd stolen from their own daughter. The justice was more complete than I'd ever dared to hope for, but the personal relationships that had grown from the aftermath were what truly mattered. Detective Martinez had become a close friend, often stopping by to check on my recovery and share updates about other family fraud cases she was working on. Peterson had refused to accept payment for his legal work, claiming that seeing justice served after 8 years of regret was compensation enough. He'd become like the grandfather I'd never really known, offering wisdom and guidance as I navigated my new financial circumstances. Most surprisingly, several of my former neighbors had reached out to build genuine friendships. Mrs. Henderson had become like a surrogate mother, often inviting me for coffee and sharing stories about Grandma Eleanor that I'd never heard. The community that had once pitied me now celebrated my resilience and strength. Jennifer Marcus's sister had flown in from California to apologize personally and help me understand family dynamics I'd been too young to recognize as a child. "Your grandmother tried to warn people about my parents' greed," she told me. "She saw this coming and tried to protect you." I wish I'd listened to her concerns. At the most healing relationships, though, were with people who'd known me before the inheritance reveal. My art teacher from college reached out after hearing the story, offering me a part-time teaching position that combined my love of creativity with financial stability. Former classmates who'd lost touch over the years reconnected, many sharing that they'd always admired my resilience without understanding what I was overcoming. I'd also started volunteering with a legal aid organization that helped families navigate inheritance disputes and elder financial abuse. My experience had taught me how easily vulnerable people could be exploited by those closest to them, and I wanted to help prevent others from enduring what I'd survived. The Vermont cabin had become my retreat for processing everything that had happened. It was there, sitting on Grandma Eleanor's old porch swing, that I'd started writing about the experience. The blog I'd created about family financial abuse and recovery had gained thousands of followers, many sharing their own stories of betrayal and healing. 6 months after the arrests, I received an unexpected visitor. Marcus's former law partner, David Walsh, knocked on my door with a proposal that stunned me. "Scarlett, our firm has been rebuilding our reputation since the Marcus situation. We're starting a new practice area focused on family financial crimes and inheritance protection. We'd like to hire you as a consultant to help us understand these cases from the victim's perspective." The irony was perfect. I'd gone from being the family disappointment to being sought after for my expertise in exposing the exact kind of fraud my family had committed. The skills I'd developed in uncovering their deception had become valuable professionally. As I sit here today, 1 year after discovering that manila envelope in the attic, I'm living a life I never could have imagined. I own my home, have a thriving business, enjoy genuine friendships, and wake up every morning without the weight of financial anxiety that had crushed me for 8 years. My parents and Marcus occasionally write letters from prison attempting to rebuild relationships and claim they always loved me. I read them, feel nothing, and file them away. Love isn't something you can claim after stealing from someone for 8 years. Love is something you demonstrate through choices, and they made their choices long ago. The people who matter in my life now are the ones who chose to stand with me when the truth came out. Detective Martinez, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Henderson, and dozens of others who've proven that family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty, honesty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Grandma Eleanor had been right about everything. Love is a choice, not an obligation. The truth does have a way of surfacing. And karma, when it finally comes around, can be more satisfying than any revenge you could plan yourself. Every morning I drink my coffee from one of Grandma's teacups and thank her for protecting me even after death. She'd given me more than money. She'd given me the chance to discover who I really was when I wasn't being held down by people who claimed to love me while actively sabotaging my life. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered family secrets that completely changed how you saw your relationships? Have you experienced karma coming full circle in your own life? Share your stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences help other people feel less alone in their struggles. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help other people find it. Subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family betrayal and building the life you deserve. And share this with anyone who needs to hear that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who claim to love us, but justice and healing are always possible. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. Sometimes the greatest gift life can give you is showing you exactly who people really are, so you can choose to surround yourself with those who truly deserve your love and energy. Keep fighting for your truth and never let anyone convince you that you deserve less than honesty and respect.